I just think it's a new space. It's a big industry, right? I mean, if you look at real estate, it's probably the biggest industry in the world. It goes through ups and downs. It always has, right? But in the long run, it's a very big opportunity. I think real estate has traditionally been a laggard in the adaptation of technology. So as you start to drive this adaptation forward, I think it's a huge opportunity for people that want to extend their capabilities into that space and can really drive some of these things forward. There's really a whole spectrum of partners that we're looking at. So first of all, there is a very big play for the traditional ecosystem of Cisco, because what this drives at the end of the day is a lot more routing, a lot more switching, a lot more unified communications that plays a more predominant role into those connected real estate environments actually. And that typically at some stage flows through the traditional eco partner system actually, both in terms of the product, the service, the installation, the maintenance. On top of that, what we're also working with is probably a new, for Cisco, ecosystem that is traditionally more focused on the traditional building management systems, traditional building automation type of systems. Okay. So as they start to evolve, more and more to an IP world, there definitely is a role that they play into that as well. So it's really a complete spectrum that plays into this. The work we do in CRE is typically very early on, to work with the developers before the building goes up, to work with them about the experience that drives the architecture, that drives the business model. Then, what happens is if they buy into that, the process goes its way. They appoint, their subcontractors, who in turn bring in their subcontractors. And then at the end of the cycle, the RFPs come out, where typically they would invite, the traditional ecosystem of Cisco to bid for those pieces that are in there actually. So we don't necessarily do a full handover to that system, but because we work in baking in the architecture from the start, what it really means is that the pie that the VAR can address becomes a lot bigger. The easiest way to imagine that is, you take any room and you look at the number of IP connections in that room, right? I mean, here, what you'll sell in the room is you'll have an IP connection, an Ethernet connection that goes into the phone. You may have another IP connection where you can plug in a PC. But if this room were fully CRE enabled, then probably some of the sensors, some of the switches, some of the in-ceiling mounts would have additional IP and Ethernet ports. So, the VAR that's invited to then bid for that type of environment sees a much bigger routing, switching, unified communication type of environment actually. But it's not just that our mission is more to drive that architecture so that it gets baked in, so that as the developer appoints subcontractors, they don't just appoint them in a traditional way, but tell them everything needs to be IP connected. And that eventually flows through that channel. It's not like we select which VAR they should work with, or that typically has its own flow as it would be today actually. Well, I do think that there is an opportunity, over time for VARs to look at that space actually, right? Because clearly, for those VARs that are interested to move closer into that space, I think there's an opportunity for them to start driving this type of consultative approach. There's an opportunity for them to probably extend their capabilities and start to bridge the gap between, where the traditional Cisco VAR plays and the kind of building management, building automation space. I think that will create opportunity, but I wouldn't say that at this point in time that is a massive, effort that's underway. So there's two approaches. On the high level, you have the people that build and want to operate the environment. In that, you have the people that build, sell, and operate. So they sell the infrastructure but then continue to operate. You also have the people that build, own and operate. For instance, someone who builds a retail mall, then operates the retail mall and keeps ownership of the retail mall, licensing or renting out the space as need be. The operations piece is much more than just the IP environment, right? I mean, it's more facility management that is there. And you have a number of facility management players that look at that as well. But they look at the broad context, right, of everything that needs to be managed in that facility. The network itself is a component of that, which typically today, from an operations point of view, they probably would give that out and contract one of our channel partners actually to run that for them. While they look at the bigger picture of facility management.
Okay, and you sort of see that continuing to be the way even as the network becomes more.
No, I think there's going to be big shifts there, right? I mean, as you've seen, like on the operation of IT infrastructure in general, where if you wind back 10 years ago, it used to be like every facility, every building had its own IT staff to maintain the local type of environment. A lot of that has been, with the emergence of the internet and some of the Indian partners, as an example, has come back here to a few players that operate that on a global basis. The same is true, there's at least as big an opportunity in facility management. Because today, a lot of the facility management is done inside the buildings, right? But once you IP connect everything, you start to see people that say, listen, I can actually start to do to manage my 10 buildings from one, right? So I can build a facility operating center that does all that from a central location. And I'm sure, there are people thinking in the marketplace, well, why would I need to do that? Why can't I, ask one of the partners in India to manage my global facility operations actually, and start to do that. So that is definitely something where there is a big opportunity that is coming for people that want to play into that space as well. There is always room both sides, right? I think it's too early to make that call. I do think that what you'll see is that the consequence of this is that how you operate that has not just technical consequences but organizational consequences, right? Just as with voice and data, where you used to have a team that was responsible for the voice network and a team that operated the data network, and they kind of merged in some way or another. I think that will also happen, between facility management, and the whole building operation management and the IT infrastructure. If it's any significance within Cisco, we now have an integrated, facility and security operating center, for instance, where we look at, security from a physical point of view, security from, touching on a technology point of view, and facility management, and start to integrate that. Definitely there will be changes there. I wouldn't necessarily call it who's winning, who's losing, but a more integrated approach where you look at, can I integrate security operations with facility management, with IT operations and network management? I think there is a lot of synergies that will be driven in that. For some of these players, it will be a dramatic shift, right? Other people really get that message and start to drive it very aggressively as a competitive advantage for them, actually. But it will, in my opinion, drive significant change into that whole value system. And those people that can adjust best for that will ultimately be the people that win in this space.